Hey guys, welcome back to Mondays at the Museum. I'm Carrie and I'm here at the Anna Bemis Palmer Museum in York, Nebraska. So today we're going to very briefly cover the history of Bradshaw, Nebraska, and then I'm going to talk to you about the items that we have on display right behind me in our Bradshaw area of the History of York County display that we have on until the end of February. Okay, so Bradshaw was established around 1880. And again, because so many of our little towns depend on the railroad, this again was another railroad one. So the B&M Railroad was extended west from York to Grand Island, and then the town, which was actually originally on the Morrison farm, moved to be closer to the railroad there to where it is now, and that is the Richards farm. It was named Bradshaw because Mrs. Richard, so Mary Richards, her maiden name was Bradshaw. They took it and they ran with it. The first store was built in 1879. It was a general store. Other early stores, there was a blacksmith shop run by Lindsley, a hardware store run by LeCount and Knapp. The big history moment that we're going to cover when we get to the artifacts as well took place June 3rd, 1890. So they basically called it a cyclone, but like this big, huge tornado came through and just decimated everything. So it was said that there were storm clouds that converged from both directions and just huge major winds, and there was not a single structure in town that didn't have damage. Then it was followed by rain and hail, and you got to think these people don't have roofs over their head anymore, so they're getting hit by this, and intense darkness. So it took out all the power, and because of the clouds you couldn't see the moon, so it was just like terrifyingly dark. Several people were killed and injured. I think they said up to 12 died and 60 were injured. They took the injured people and they put them on a train with the women and children from town, and they sent them to York, and then a return train that came back to Bradshaw was filled with like doctors and nurses, which helped out. It did take them several years to recover from this disaster. Basically, several businesses didn't reopen until like 1902. So you got to think 1890 to 1902. We're just so very lucky to have the technology and equipment that we do nowadays, because can you imagine being without, your home or your business for 12 years? Fun facts about Bradshaw, hopefully a little bit more fun than the one that we just went over. July 8th, 1880, the post office. Now, this post office had like 3 previous locations, but it moved into the W.O. Post General Store on Main Street. I'm telling you this because Mr. Post was the dude, right? Okay. So he became the postmaster when this moved to his store. But before this, he had already started a bank, a grain elevator, a drugstore. He was also the first depot agent. He was a telegraph operator. He was a livestock dealer, and he owned the oldest house in town. So he had a lot going on. So good for you, Mr. Post. The first school was run out of a dugout. We went over dugouts in previous videos, so I won't cover that. But it moved then to a framed store building, and then they got their first schoolhouse in 1881, which of course was destroyed in 1890 by the storm. At one point, Bradshaw was the second largest shipping point for cattle and hogs that were being shipped to Chicago. The peak was up to 40 carloads a day, which I guess was ridiculous. They also shipped out large quantities of grain, and then in return they got coal and lumber. In the early days, there were 3 main churches. So the Methodist started in 1871, the Christian started in 1875, and then the Congregational started in 1880. And remember that one for when we get to our tour. The fire department formed in 1908. The first newspaper was the Bradshaw Gazette, but it had a very, very short run life. And then so it started in 1884, but it was immediately followed by like the Bradshaw Express, and then the Bradshaw Republican, and the Bradshaw Monitor. And then there is a poem that was written by a reader of the Bradshaw Monitor that I'm going to read to you because I just think it's enjoyable. Again, I don't know who the author is. It just says reader of Bradshaw Monitor. You can boast about your county seats and laugh and have your fun and say our little village is slightly on the bum, but if the city suits you better, that's where you ought to be, but the little town of Bradshaw is good enough for me. Very nice. All right, now I'm going to take you for a quick tour of the artifacts that we have representing Bradshaw. So here is our Bradshaw section as a whole. So here is a copy of the Bradshaw Republican. It says it's from January 19th, 1899. Then we have a picture. It says a bird's eye view of Bradshaw facing east. Here is the Henry Sheldon home. So that is supposedly the first frame home that was built in all of Bradshaw. Here's the public school, early 1900s. So this would be after the tornado rebuild. And then we have a map of Bradshaw over here. And if you're wondering what that giant stick is in the middle, you can see it is a barley fork. Next to that, we have the GAR charter. So this, you can see, it is the Noble Graves post, and it was formed on the 12th day of our Lord, June, let's see here, June in the year of our Lord, 1882. Here are some items that belong to C.B. Palmer. You've got a cigar clipper, some cups, a little pouch from his merchandise store. And below that is a medical bag. So that belonged to George Andrew Morrison. So he basically practiced medicine in Bradshaw from 1905 until he passed away in 1934. Here are some trading stamps. So this is from the co-op. It says that you receive 1 stamp for each 10-cent purchase, and then basically you could trade them in for goods. We have a pin tray from the dentist office of Dr. Edwin Miller. Here is a band from the early 1880s, as well as some photos of some early residents of the town. And what's really helpful is that it has the names listed right there on there. Here's a plate from the centennial, so 1880 through 1980, and you can see the tornado right there in the middle. And we have a little history booklet here from 1902. Skipping over a little, I have a powder pouch here from the Civil War. And then my favorite item right behind it, so this is actually a grain sack stencil. This guy, George Doubleday, he moved here from Illinois, and his neighbors used to steal his grain sacks, and so he went and got a stencil and put his name on everything so they couldn't steal them anymore. Brilliant. Here is a steam engine wrench. We have a photo of the AOUW, so basically Ancient Order United Workmen, and that was like the hall where they met. And then we have a couple of items that belong to Emma Schneringer. We have her wedding booklet that has her wedding certificate to Horace Stewart, and then her graduation diploma, so her high school diploma from Bradshaw. It is dated 1898. Okay, and then right in the middle of everything, we have our collection of photos. So again, June 3rd, 1890, this was from the tornado or cyclone that went through, that completely just decimated the village. And you can see all the structural damage that was done through the very high wind gusts and the tornado that went through, and then, like I said, they said it followed with severe rain and hail. And several people were underneath the debris, and it was just a terrifying thing. We also have a chunk of the Congregational Church bell. So this says that it was destroyed and it was actually never rebuilt. But yeah, a chunk of the bell. And the last item I'm going to show you, we have this York Republican. It's a special edition. It came out June 4th, 1890, and it talks about just the horror stories from the residents and how you can help. So that is a very brief history of Bradshaw, as well as a showing of the items that we have representing the town. We will not be having a Mondays in the Museum next week because I will be closed for the holiday. These will resume in January, and the next town is going to be Henderson. So look for a video probably January 6th on Henderson, Nebraska, in which I will give you a brief history, and we'll talk about the items we have representing Henderson. We are open for the rest of this week, so Tuesday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Make sure to swing by and see the artifacts in person. We'll see you later.